Hey guys, I wanted to talk to you today about the problem of safetyism. And I'm going to start by reading a quote by Steven Pinker that I just really love. Steven says, "In every era, the way people raise their children is a window into their conception of human nature. When parents believed in children's innate depravity, they beat them when they sneezed. When they believed in innate innocence, they banned the game of dodgeball." And that's actually true in the sense that there are many places now that you can't play dodgeball at school. And if you're less than 10 years old, it's actually a problem if you're out in the park by yourself, and the parents could get in trouble for negligence. So we've gone a little too far. Starting back in the 60s, we got really serious about safety, and we started doing some really good things like creating seatbelt laws and getting lead out of the paint. We progressed to having kids wear bike helmets. And over the next several decades, we did a great job at reducing childhood mortality. We cut it in half over the last 30 years. So that's a really impressive victory. So that's the healthy part of progress. But now we're kind of going too far. We're trying to make everything so safe that we're actually getting to the other side of the curve where we're causing more harms than doing good. So one way to think about this is there's a natural curve of the effort that you put in makes a certain amount of change on one part of the curve. So for every bit of attention to safety or even attention to, say, studying, you're getting better and better along that curve. And then there's a part of the curve where it starts to round off a little bit. And at that part of the curve, the amount of effort that you're putting in yields less benefit. It's still going in the positive direction, but it's yielding less benefit for every unit of safety or any unit of studying. If you've ever studied, well into the night, starting to slow down a little bit in terms of your progress. And then we get to the other side of the curve where things are going down. And in that case, like in the studying example, every unit of studying is actually making your brain so much more tired, and it's breaking down what you've already learned, and you're actually losing ground for putting in effort. And so the same is true with safetyism. We're getting close to that other side of the curve, perhaps on the other side of the curve. The more effort we put in trying to make things just a little bit more safer, we're actually causing problems that we're not recognizing. So that's part of the unhealthy version of progressivism, this culture of safetyism. And let me show you a few places where this shows up. First of all, kids are inside of a physical bubble. They're like home a lot more than they used to be. They stay safe inside their home under the watchful eyes of their parents, which means that they're not out getting as much exercise. They're not out riding their bikes. They're not out making forts in the woods. They're not negotiating with others. They're watching screens a whole lot more. They're being entertained by the parents, which, in certain situations, that's a wonderful thing that we spend time together and enjoy each other. But then when parents are obligated to be the main playmate of their children, that's not psychologically healthy for either of them. So this intense physical bubble of protection is starting to tip to the other side. We also have begun to really get to the place where visual stimuli and verbal inputs, things that we hear, and emotions are getting so well controlled that we're causing problems. So on the positive side, we started saying, these movies are a little too intense for our 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, right? It really jacks up their nervous system, puts intense images and stressful things into their body. They're having dreams at night and things like that. And so the progressive part, healthy progressive part of this is like, let's be appropriate with the level of visual stimulation and intensity in terms of movies and things in the world that they experience. Let's protect childhood innocence to a certain degree and not overwhelm them with things that are more adult. Adults are able to handle, but kids are not. So that's the positive side of it. But now we've got to the side of like, they can't see anything intense, right? They can't hear about anything in the world intense. We need to overly shelter them and overly protect them. We see this sometimes like at camps and stuff when kids start bumping into each other, which kids are going to do, and somebody says something that they say, that's not nice, that's mean, that's bullying. So our kids have a very low threshold these days, this new iGen, as Jean Twenge calls it, which is a great book, by the way. They have a very low threshold for what's harmful, what's hurtful, what's mean, what's bullying. And so they often come home and tell their parents, that I got bullied today, this happened, blah, blah, blah. And the parents are pretty quick to jump in and say, hey, what happened here, and protect the kids. And there's not enough of kids kind of sorting things out for themselves. Obviously, at some point, if somebody's really rough and way bigger than the other kids and intense and on them and controlling and dominating, like the classic definition of bully, yeah, people should step in and should stop that. Absolutely. But we've lowered the bar for what's bullying to just normal kids making mistakes, kids trespassing on each other. And they have a saying in Egypt that he who meddles in the affairs of children hangs himself. And by that, I think it's meant that if you watch the interactions of children, it's pretty complex. There's usually a little tit for tat and escalation. It's usually not just one-sided where there's a definite perpetrator and a definite victim, and then people come in and rescue the victim. And that's one of the problems today too, is everything is framed in a perpetrator-victim mindset, somebody does something you don't like and bothers you, they're a perpetrator and you're the victim and you deserve all the rescuing from other people and the protection. And that's an incredibly unhealthy mindset to put children in. Of course, that happens sometimes, so that's true enough. That's one of the frames that you can look at things through. But today, the pathological form of progressivism is putting these glasses on our children. Who's the perpetrator? Who's the bad guy? And trying to have the children be the victims because then they get rescued and they're the good ones, right? So that's an unhealthy mindset. Our children also are always chaperoned when they're outside, this new generation. They're often with their parents. They don't just go to the mall by themselves or out into the neighborhoods or to the movies. They're often with their parents when they do these things. So they always have an adult around kind of chaperoning them. And this, of course, doesn't allow them to learn how to navigate situations out in the world on their own and to learn how to negotiate with others, which are really important skills. And you need, 10,000 hours of doing this to get good at it. You don't want to suddenly be dropped off at college and have to start learning how to do this by yourself without a lot of practice. The other problem with this culture of safetyism is it's really heavy on top-down control, right? Lots of rules, lots of laws, lots of moral codes. In the old days, it was the traditional folks, the conservative Christians in Georgia where I lived, that had this real top-down control of what the rules are and what the roles are and the laws and the moral codes. And they were always, kind of suppressing people and their individuality and their authentic expression and the truths that they had based on what was okay to say. And now on the pathological progressive side, we have the same thing going on. And this is a problem because what it does is it leads to less free speech, less considering of ideas, less out loud talking and negotiating and trying to get at truth. And therefore, we don't have healthy debates and we don't understand what's going on as much. And we're just kind of going along with the crowd in terms of these moral codes. So these are some of the problems with this increased culture of safetyism. Check out Fiercely Loving Fathers. There's a free intro chapter on there to my up-and-coming book, The Lost Art of Fathering. And hope you'll join the Fiercely Loving Fathers community. Take care.